Can you imagine what happens when a human voice rises up to challenge God himself? Thousands of years ago, on the walls of Jerusalem, a man climbed the upper aqueduct and began to speak. His words were not merely political threats. They were a direct attack on the faith of an entire people. His name was Rabshakeh, and he represented the most powerful empire of the time, Assyria. But this is not just the story of an arrogant messenger. It is the story of Rabshakeh and Hezekiah, of a siege that tested faith in God to the limit, and of how the divine liberation of Jerusalem, it happened in a way that no one could have predicted. In this video, you'll discover who Rabshakeh was in biblical history, why his words nearly destroyed a nation's hope, and what happened when the silence of heaven was broken. And in the end, I'll reveal a powerful truth that can transform how you confront intimidating voices in your own life. So take a deep breath, because this is the story of Rabshakeh, the voice that threatened Jerusalem, the day faith was tested. Jerusalem was experiencing unsettling times. Through the city gates, blood-curdling news arrived. The Assyrian army from the Bible was on the move. It wasn't just a distant rumor. It was reality marching towards the walls. People whispered in the markets. Mothers held their children tighter. Elders recalled stories of other cities that had tried to resist Assyria and had been wiped off the map. The siege of Jerusalem was no longer a possibility. It was a matter of time. But the terror didn't just come from the soldiers. It came from something more subtle, more pervasive. The certainty that no nation had survived Sennacherib's power. Kingdom after kingdom had fallen, walls crumbled, gods were humiliated. And now, in the heart of that suffocating tension, a name began to circulate. A name that carried authority and coldness. A name that represented the voice of the most feared empire in the known world. Who was Rabshakeh, and why would his arrival change everything forever? Imagine the scene. A column of Assyrian soldiers advances along the dusty road. Their armor gleams under the scorching sun, reflecting the strength of an empire that conquered entire nations. In the center of this military formation rides a man unlike any other. He carries no sword. He carries something far more dangerous: words. His name is Rabshakeh. He is the official spokesman for Sennacherib, the king who made nations tremble at the mere mention of his name. Rabshakeh is not just a soldier, he is a strategist, a diplomat, a war psychologist. His function is clear: to destroy hope before even firing an arrow. The pride of the Assyrian Empire walks with him. Each step he takes carries the memory of destroyed cities, burned temples, and scattered peoples. Rabshakeh knows the power of words. He knows that before conquering walls, one must conquer minds. As he approaches Jerusalem, he observes the towers, the defenses, the tense faces of the guards. And he smiles, because he knows he doesn't need to invade. He only needs to speak, and his words, like poison, will begin to corrode the faith of those people. The biblical story of Rabshakeh shows us that not every battle is fought with swords. Some of the most devastating wars take place in the realm of the mind, where doubt is sown and hope is stifled. Rabshakeh came not merely as a messenger, he came as the instrument of fear. But can human words, however powerful they may be, truly silence the voice of God? As Rabshakeh approached, inside the palace in Jerusalem, King Hezekiah of Judah faced the impossible weight of leadership. He knew what was coming. Reports arrived daily about Assyrian brutality. Neighboring cities had already been destroyed. Judah was surrounded. Hezekiah was no ordinary king. He had restored the temple, destroyed idols, and called the people back to true worship. But now, all that faith would be tested in a way he never imagined. How do you protect a people when the enemy seems invincible? The political tension was unbearable. Some advisors suggested surrender, others spoke of desperate alliances with foreign nations. But deep down, Hezekiah knew that no human strategy would be enough. The only hope lay in God. But was that hope realistic, or just an illusion in the face of such a powerful army? Jerusalem was filled with fear. Children asked their parents, Are they going to come in here? Soldiers looked at their spears and wondered if that would be enough. And Hezekiah, amidst all this, struggled between the responsibility of protecting his people and the need to trust in something he could not see, God's promise. The faith tested in Jerusalem was beginning to show its true face. And the most difficult test was yet to come, because Rabshakeh was about to speak. And then it happened, the moment recorded in 2 Kings 18 that would change the course of history. Rabshakeh didn't ask for a private meeting. He didn't want to negotiate in silence. He chose the upper aqueduct, a strategic place where everyone could hear. There, before the officials of Judah, he stood. His voice was firm, calculated, designed to reach not only the leaders, but the people on the walls. He had not come to fight, not yet. He had come for something far more effective, to sow doubt. The psychology of war in the Bible has never been more evident. Rabshakeh knew exactly what to do. Before attacking bodies, one must attack the mind. Before tearing down walls, one must tear down hope, and his words would be the perfect instrument. The officers of Judah, Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah, stood tense, waiting. They knew this was no ordinary meeting. It was the beginning of an invisible war, where every word would carry the weight of an entire army. And since we're talking about pivotal moments, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next Bible stories that can transform your faith. Rabshakeh opened his mouth, and when he began to speak, the silence that fell over Jerusalem was deafening, because those words were not merely threats, they were a direct attack on the heart of trust in God. On what are you relying? Rabshakeh's question cut through the air like a blade. He wasn't just asking a rhetorical question. He was publicly dissecting every point of support Judah thought it had. First, he ridiculed the alliance with Egypt. Are you trusting Egypt? He mocked. That's like leaning on a broken stick that pierces the hand of whoever holds it. The metaphor was cruel and accurate. Everyone knew Egypt was unreliable, and Rabshakeh knew that they knew. Then he attacked Hezekiah's religious reforms. You removed the altars and told the people to worship only in Jerusalem. Is your God pleased with this? The attempt was clear: to distort obedience into doubt, to transform faith into uncertainty. But the worst was yet to come. Rabshakeh looked directly at the soldiers on the walls and said something devastating. My lord, the king of Assyria is willing to make a wager with you. He will give you 2,000 horses if you can find riders to mount them. It was a public humiliation. He was saying, you are so weak that you wouldn't even be able to use help if it were offered. And then came the blasphemy against God in the Bible. Rabshakeh declared, do you think I came here without the Lord's permission? It was the Lord himself who told me, go and destroy this land. It was the most calculated lie. He was trying to make the people believe that even God had abandoned Jerusalem. The threat against Jerusalem was not merely military, it was spiritual, psychological, and emotional. And the question that echoed in every heart was simple and terrifying. Can God really save us this time? What Rabshakeh was waging was not merely a battle of steel against steel. It was a spiritual war in the Old Testament, as real as spears and shields, but infinitely more dangerous. He continued, don't let Hezekiah deceive you. No god of any nation has been able to deliver his people from the hand of the king of Assyria. What makes you think your God will be any different? The list was long and devastating. Hamath fell, Arpad fell, Sepharvaim fell. Their gods could not save them. Why would the God of Israel be any different? It was deadly logic, because apparently Rabshakeh was right. Empirically, all nations had been destroyed. All gods had been proven powerless. Assyria seemed to be a force of nature, unstoppable, divine in its own right. But there was something Rabshakeh did not understand. Something that completely escaped his military and political comprehension, the difference between dead idols and the living God. The gods of other nations were wood and stone, human creations without any power. But the God of Israel was the creator of heaven and earth, the only one who had real power. Nevertheless, the impact of Rabshakeh's words was undeniable. Trust in God during the siege was being attacked with surgical precision. Each phrase was designed to create fear, fuel doubt, and destroy hope. And the worst part, he spoke all of this in Hebrew, deliberately, so that every person on the walls would understand every word, so that the poison would spread throughout the city. This was the biblical story of courage tested to the limit. How can a people resist when everything around them seems to confirm that defeat is inevitable? When the officials of Judah returned to the palace, they were devastated. The Bible says they tore their clothes, a sign of deep mourning, of utter despair, and they repeated to Hezekiah every venomous word that Rabshakeh had uttered. The king also tore his clothes, not as a sign of weakness, but as an acknowledgement of the gravity of the situation. He covered himself with sackcloth and did something that not all leaders do when faced with impossible crises. He went to the temple. Hezekiah did not call a war council. He did not try to fabricate a last-minute military strategy. He went directly into the presence of God because he understood that this was not merely a political or military battle. It was a battle for the honor of God's name. Hezekiah's prayer was one of the most honest and powerful in the Bible. He acknowledged the reality, "It is true, Lord, that the kings of Assyria have destroyed all those nations and their gods." He did not try to hide the facts. But then he made the crucial distinction. But these were not true gods. They were only wood and stone, made by human hands. And then came the cry from the heart, "Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God." It was not a selfish request. It was a request for God's glory, for the manifestation of divine power before a world that needed to know that the Lord still reigns. The faith tested in Jerusalem was reaching its decisive moment, and God's answer was about to arrive. And then God spoke, not with thunder or earthquakes first, but through a man, the prophet Isaiah. He went to Hezekiah with a direct message from heaven. "This is what the Lord says, do not be afraid of the words you have heard." That was exactly what Hezekiah needed to hear. Don't be afraid of words. Because however powerful Rabshakeh's words seemed, they were just that, human words. And human words, however intimidating they may be, have no power over God's decrees. Isaiah continued with a devastating message for Assyrian pride. "Whom have you insulted and blasphemed? Against whom have you raised your voice? It was against the Holy One of Israel." The prophet made it clear that Rabshakeh had crossed a line. He had not merely threatened a nation. He had defied God himself. And then came the prophecy. "He will not enter this city, nor will he shoot an arrow here. I will defend this city to save it, for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David." It was a promise impossible in human eyes. How could a city be saved without a fight? How could an army be defeated without a battle? Isaiah's message directly challenged Rabshakeh's logic. Yes, other nations had fallen. Yes, other gods had failed. But the God of Israel was not like the others. He was the only true God. And when he decides to defend his people, no army, however large, can prevail. The prophets Isaiah and Rabshakeh represented two completely opposing discourses. One preached fear and doubt, the other proclaimed faith and hope, and history was about to reveal which one spoke the truth. And then it happened. That night, while the Assyrian army slept with the confidence of those who believe victory is guaranteed, the heavens moved. The Bible records it directly and supernaturally. That very night the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. 185,000. Let that number sink in. It wasn't a battle. There were no war cries, clash of swords, military strategy. It was a divine act, instantaneous, absolute. When dawn broke, what should have been an invincible army was just a field of corpses. The miracle against the Assyrians was not subtle. It was a public, unequivocal declaration of God's power. Jerusalem didn't need to raise a sword. Hezekiah didn't need to negotiate. The people didn't need to fight. God fought for them. And when God fights, no human empire can resist. Imagine the dawn that morning, the soldiers of Judah on the walls, prepared for the worst, looking out and seeing silence. There was no movement in the Assyrian camp, no shouts from commanders, just a heavy, strange silence. And then the realization, the divine liberation of Jerusalem had happened, not in the way they expected, not by human force, but by the invisible and powerful hand of the God who does not abandon those who trust in him. The voice that defied God had been silenced, not by arguments, but by an act of absolute power. Rabshakeh, who had climbed the aqueduct with such arrogance, now had to return to Sennacherib with the most humiliating news a messenger could deliver. We have lost, and we don't know how. Sennacherib, the king who made nations tremble, returned to Nineveh defeated. The humiliation was complete. The empire that seemed invincible had been broken before a city he considered insignificant. The fall of Assyrian pride was not only military, it was moral, psychological, and spiritual. Rabshakeh, who had spoken with such certainty about God's impotence, now had to face reality. His words had been empty, his threats useless. All the power of the Assyrian Empire was not enough to bring down a city that God had chosen to protect. And the story doesn't end there. The Bible records that sometime later, while Sennacherib was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, 2 of his own sons assassinated him. The king who mocked the God of Israel died at the hands of his own family in his own temple before his own powerless idol. It is a devastating and profound irony. Rabshakeh had asked, which God managed to deliver his people from the hands of Assyria? The answer came clearly and undeniably. The God of Israel, the only true God, the one who is not made of wood or stone, but who is alive, powerful, and faithful to those who trust in him. The pride of the Assyrian Empire, which seemed so invincible, was crushed, not by a military alliance, not by human strategy, but by the direct intervention of the God who defends his name and his people. And Jerusalem remained, not because its walls were high, not because its soldiers were strong, but because God had promised to defend it, and God keeps his promises. Today, thousands of years later, Rabshakeh's name is still remembered, but not as a hero, not as a brilliant strategist. He is remembered as the man who tried to destroy the faith with words and failed miserably. His story teaches us something profound about the power and the limits of intimidation. Rabshakeh had everything in his favor: a powerful army, a terrifying reputation, seemingly logical arguments. But he made the fatal mistake of believing that his strength was greater than God. The defense of Jerusalem was unconventional. It didn't involve brilliant military tactics or battlefield heroism. It was won by something much simpler and, paradoxically, much more powerful: trust. Hezekiah trusted. The people resisted the temptation to panic, and God acted. This biblical story of courage shows us that true courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to trust in God, even when everything around you says it's madness to do so. Even when the evidence points to defeat, even when powerful voices try to convince you that God cannot or will not intervene. Rabshakeh represents all the voices of intimidation we face. Voices that say, God has forgotten you. Your faith is naive. No one will help you. You are alone. But the story of Jerusalem reminds us, these voices may be loud, but they are not true. And voices that are not true have no ultimate power over those who belong to the living God. The echo of Rabshakeh's voice still resonates as a warning. Never underestimate the God you cannot see, because he sees you. And when he decides to act, no human force can stop him. So here we are, at the end of this journey through the story of Rabshakeh, the voice that threatened Jerusalem. And what have we learned? That the threat was real, the fear was justified, the situation was impossible, but God was greater. Trust in God during the siege was not a blind or naive faith. It was a faith tested, proven, refined by the fire of doubt and terror. Hezekiah did not pretend that all was well. He recognized the gravity of the situation, but he also recognized that his only hope was in God, and that made all the difference. Today you may be facing your own Rabshakeh. It could be an external voice, someone who says you're not enough, that your dreams are impossible, that God doesn't care. Or it could be an internal voice, doubts, fears, insecurities that seem as logical and convincing as Rabshakeh's arguments. But here's the truth I promised at the beginning of this video. No voice of intimidation is louder than the voice of God. No human threat can nullify a divine promise. And when you choose to trust, even when all seems lost, you are positioning yourself to see God act in ways you never imagined. The faith demonstrated in Jerusalem teaches us that God does not abandon those who cry out to him. He may not act in the way we expect, he may not follow our timetable, but when he acts completely, powerfully, and undeniably. Isaiah 37:20 sums it all up. Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. This is the final lesson. When God delivers you, it's not just for your benefit. It's so that the world may see and know that he is real, powerful, and faithful. So I challenge you today. Stop listening to the voices of intimidation. Stop believing the lies that say you are alone or abandoned. Go to the secret place, as Hezekiah went to the temple, and lay your situation before God, and then wait. Because the same hand that destroyed the Assyrian army is still active, still powerful, and still defends those who trust in him. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below saying, "I trust in God," and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any more Bible stories that will strengthen your faith and transform your life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that God is greater than any threat. May the story of Rabshakeh and Hezekiah always remind us, true faith is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of trust in the midst of fear. And that trust will never, ever be put to shame. Until the next video. And remember, when God is on your side, it doesn't matter who is against you.